Welcome into another episode of IMG Podcast. I'm your boy Nikolai Hill. Of course, the episode is brought to you by Nothing But Net International. Thanks for joining us today. Of course, we're a program based on giving the immigrant culture and people who are not inclined to be newsworthy. One of the big things that's happening right now is the nomination for the Republican nominee. Some of the candidates we've already know who they are. They're very popular to us, like the names of Christie and the former Vice President Mike Pence. But we're going to try to give you some information about the ones that you might not know as much about. These are the six main people still left in the competition. I like to call it, or say, in the running for the head person for the job. Almost said head man for the job, but the head person for the job, because it's not a head man. There are ladies involved as well. One of those ladies is former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. She's represented herself well in the last 20 years when it comes to politics, and especially for her constituents there in South Carolina. And so she'll be in this race as well. A lot we know about, of course, Governor from Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis. He's going to be involved in the upcoming debates, the GOP as well, on trying to get a nominee for the Republican vote. Governor Chris Christie, New Jersey governor, somebody that we're really familiar with in the news, especially from the last 5 or 6 years, starting with the presidency of said Donald Trump. And since then, his campaign to get Donald Trump reelected and subsequent things that have happened after that. We can also talk about, of course, the main man himself, Mr. Donald Trump. He's been president. He's a one-term president. He's in a lot of people's eyes. Of course, this country is split. And if you ask when I say a lot of people, we're going to say 50% of the country, because that's basically what voted for him in the last elections, narrowly losing to the now president, Joe Biden. Donald Trump got elected himself because he was a good businessman. People like people who are good with money. And if you go down, you can get it back.
Resulting in job losses, and his commercial airline, Trump Shuttle, grounded.
I was at the highest of all pedestals, the hottest in the country. Everything I touched turned to gold. And then one day, the pedestal was knocked out from under me.
Midas had lost his touch. Donald Trump's businesses filed for bankruptcy twice. He explained his financial woes to us in 1994.
I had billions of dollars of debt, in excess of $5 billion.
Tim O'Brien, who wrote a biography on Trump, says his specialty wasn't building, but branding.
What he essentially has been is a robust branding and marketing operation and an incredible self-promoter. He's essentially a human shingle.
What do you want?
Well, that's always a question I hate to answer, because it's like, who cares?
I know, but I love to. I care. I really care.
Forbes magazine says I'm worth a lot.
That year, Forbes estimated his worth at only $2.5 billion. But the actual number, the American public has no idea. Remember, he refused to release his tax returns.
So you've got to ask yourself, why won't he release his tax returns? Maybe he's not as rich as he says he is.
The two people that we're going to highlight today on the Immigrant Podcast, of course, brought to you by Nothing But Net International, is South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and entrepreneur, pharmaceutical CEO, businessman, Vivek Ramswamy. Of course, Tim Scott, I'll give you a little bit of background on him. He's been in the South Carolina. And if you're successful, you're going to have more finances. And that's what Mr. Ramswamy wants to bring to the country.
In a party that hates the Soros name, yet you accepted a Paul and Daisy Soros scholarship at law school that was specifically set up for the children of immigrants. It was an affirmative action scholarship, and your defense for that is that you didn't have the money to pay for law school, even though you'd already made over $1 million at the time. 2009 and 2010, you made $750,000.
He's also a part of the Senate banking community. And he's a graduate from Charleston Southern University, a fine university in South Carolina. And his main impact to the country, at least that's what he wants to bring to the country, is financial literacy and financial strategicness when it comes to having a better plan about how this country and how government spends money. He was born in 1965, so he's still a pretty young guy. And this is the age we're talking about for presidents going forward. Right now, we have presidents and people who have been in office that are 70, 75, 80 years old. And so I find that personally quite appealing if I would be voting for a Republican candidate. He was elected to full term in office in the Senate in 2016 and reelected in 2022. And from his first time in the Senate until now, I have to say, if I'm being very honest, he's been doing a good job. He's been good for his constituents. He's been consistent in building his constituents up, and he's been consistent with his point of what he wants to bring to the country and to his personal in his community, and that's financial growth, financial stability for his constituents in South Carolina.
So as you well know, the money is pouring in for Tim Scott, but he's also spending it quite fast. Is that turning into votes, do you think?
Well, it certainly is. And all you have to do is look at the polling, whether it's Iowa, New Hampshire, you see it in the national polls as well. This is a candidate who came from 1% to double digits right now and is gaining on other candidates. And I think the telltale factor of what's happening in this race is who is pointing their attacks at who. And right now, they're turning their guns, their attacks on Tim Scott. And that's simply because he is doing well. He is getting those voters. They see his fundraising, and that's having a tremendous impact in these early states.
We'll talk a little bit about the Harvard graduate, Vivek Ramswamy. Ramswamy is a businessman, former pharmaceutical CEO, and he's done that very successfully. Money, of course, is a big part of life. People who are